that rolling? Okay.
Yes.
Ready?
Good job, guys.
Yep. See ya.
See you, bye.
Bye.
Alex, how would you describe your home and family when you were growing up?
I'd say I was very lucky growing up to be raised in a home that was filled with love and compassion. I was lucky that my mom was able to take off of work for the first few years that I was alive and just be a stay-at-home mom to take care of me. And one of the big parts of our family was having foster kids. We'd had over 70 foster kids throughout the years, and so kind of having different experiences with all of those kids and their unique personalities and experiences definitely impacted all of us and how we look at life, and I think it definitely molded me a lot in who I am and how I look at people, and try to see how different all of our situations really are, and how much our family life and the circumstances that we've been through impact who we are. So,
What did you want to be when you were a child?
I think I always had a desire to be an inventor. I still do. There is definitely things in my mind that roll around where I'd like to make something that's useful for people. I have, some scribblings that I've drawn out here and there, diagrams of little ideas, but nothing's ever really come far enough to ever be developed in even with a prototype. So, yeah, I wish that I would have come up with something along the way.
What's your favorite movie and why?
So the reason that this is my favorite movie is because it's had an impact on my life and how I view the world, is Schindler's List. And really it comes down to kind of that final scene with Liam Neeson, and he's talking with some of the people that he's saved from the Holocaust. And he just begins to break down, looking at some of the possessions that he has held on to that have value in this world, and realizing perhaps the human value that it cost to keep them, to hold on to them. And just that brokenheartedness of the willingness to sacrifice for others, to say, this gold pen is not worth 2 lives, this car is not worth 10 people's lives, really impacted me in the way that I perceive how I should be with my life, with my finances, with how I treat others, that possessions should never come before people, that we should have a goal to strive towards loving others. And he definitely gets a lot of compassion from the people who are around him in the end of that scene, saying, well, no, you needed those things in order to keep the charade going, to trick the government to allow you to save us, so it's not all about, we'll have to give up everything for everybody else, but it's finding that balance of how much do I hold on to in order to be the most productive in society, with giving compassion and love towards others, and raising the value of life, or saving other people's lives even. I think a lot of us in our current culture, in our current day and age, we have access to information around the world of people who are struggling, and yet it still feels so far removed from us that we feel like we can't do anything. But we're in such a unique position to be able to do things for others, and we need to be more diligent and take that at heart.
If you were able to travel, where would you like to go and why?
Well, I've loved traveling the few destinations in the world I've been able to go, like India and El Salvador and Mexico and Canada. For me, the Philippines, the best part of all those journeys has always been about the people. And the experiences that I've gotten to live through other people's lives in those areas, even though only for short amounts of time, getting to see how someone else in a different part of the world lives with different monetary incomes, with different assets, with different things available to them, and how joyous people are in life even without all of those things. So for me, again, the places that I would love to visit come down to the people and why they're there. And so for right now, that's the Philippines, because of my wife's family and her background being from the Philippines. I would love to go see her family again and spend time with them and just get to know their lives better and experience how they've lived, because it's very different from how I've lived. Even though I have been there before, there are lots of things that you forget about when you're here, about how easy it is to go get a glass of water, about how easy it is to just take a hot shower if you're not feeling quite well, or how easy it is to just have access to food, as much food really as we want. It's humbling to be in that position where you really have to work for all of those things, and everything takes a little bit extra effort, a little bit extra time, a little bit extra thought. And so Philippines.
What has been your biggest accomplishment?
I think my biggest accomplishment has been my relationships. So first and foremost with my wife, the development of that relationship and the time and effort that it's taken to develop the trust and the love and all that goes into a relationship, and then also with friends and family. There's so often times that we make it through the end of a hard time or a difficult time, and we get to look back at that and then hold each other's hands and say, you know what, like, we made it through that hard time, like, how much easier is the next one gonna be? And having those relationships that grow stronger over time, I don't know what greater accomplishment there could be, really.
What's been your biggest disappointment?
So hand in hand with the greatest accomplishment is relationships, and how I feel I've let others down or disappointed others in relationship. So I feel like one of the things that I've struggled always with is to convey with enough energy or with enough emotion how much I care about the people who are around me, and also in the times where they've gone above and beyond and tried, given me a gift or tried to create an experience for me, where I feel like I've let them down without being, I haven't been exuberant enough to express how happy they've made me or how joyful they've made me in that moment. And I wish that I could have done better at that. I also feel that part of that is, I've always struggled with this vein of criticism or negative thought, even when when it comes to things where I will evaluate first instead of appreciate first. And I wish that I would have gotten better at flipping that around, where I could have appreciated first and then maybe later on in my own private time evaluated just for my own benefit, if you will.
What's your biggest regret?
I think that it's a tough question, because I don't think I've done anything where I will say, I wish I hadn't ever done that and I would be in a different place in my life now, because who knows how my life would have turned out if I hadn't. But I really regret kind of college, the amount of finances that went into it, the amount of time that went into it, that I don't think I got as much benefit out of it as I thought I would have. True, there were definite benefits. There were good things that came out of it. There were good relationships and learning opportunities and all of those things. But I think that the financial cost and the time toll definitely outweighed what was the intended purpose of it.
What do you remember about being told you have cancer?
I remember it was kind of, oh yeah, we kind of didn't want to tell you right away. So when I first got out of surgery, the doctor came in and talked to me about what they had done in the operation. And that was a few days after. So they didn't, my wife and family hadn't told me that they had already told them that there was cancer. So I hadn't heard that yet. So the surgeon was the first one to tell me that there was cancer. It was just very surreal. It was, all of it seemed kind of like a dream. It still kind of does. Mm-hmm. It's happened very fast. And there's a good part to that, because it doesn't mean it means I haven't had too much time to over process, because I definitely can do that. But at the same time, it's given me just enough time to be able to appreciate and I think focus on the important things.
Okay. So since you were told, what do you spend most of your time thinking about?
I think I spend most of my time thinking about what can I do to make sure that my wife is prepared, to make sure that my family is prepared, that my friends are prepared. And then beyond that, it's kind of spending time thinking about how I don't know, can leave a legacy of some kind with them. I've had lots of goals and dreams throughout my life, as far as retiring in the Philippines maybe one day, and maybe helping with an orphanage, or doing something along the lines of just taking in kids to help in that situation, helping my wife's family, helping my family, helping my friends. There's a lot of dreams that I've had as far as aspirations of what the church looks like, and the relationships between church members, and there's really a lot rolled into that. So I think a lot about politics with my friends, and religion with my friends, and theology, and then kind of talking even about what's even important in those discussions. Should we even spend time on some of these? Are they really, are we being mindful of our time and where we spend it?
What do you think cancer has taught you?
I I guess I don't want to give the credit to cancer because it's just a thing, but the potential knowledge of knowing that you're going to die sooner than you thought you were puts you in a unique position to reevaluate and refocus your priorities, and again, where you spend your time and what you want to make sure is done at the end of the day or at the end of the week.
What can people do to provide you with emotional comfort?
I think right now it's exactly what we were just talking about, kind of off camera. Just the realization of being around, is all that's needed. Sometimes we get in such of a desire to look for the need and see this need and like, how can I serve? And it's great. It's nice to not have to constantly have to find ways to do everything for yourself. But when you can just sit in comfort with each other and listen to each other's hearts and just talk with each other where there's no animosity or frustration or concerns, and it's just relaxed. Just knowing that people are there without that. And I feel like I haven't quite nailed that one down yet. But
I think too that if you are spending your time thinking about what you're going to say next when you're with people, then you're going to miss it all. But like you said, listening, if you just sit there and listen, you won't miss anything.
Right.
And maybe there'll be no words
for
a long time.
Sure.
And there don't have to be.
Yeah, and it's sitting with this moment right here. Like, let's not worry about tomorrow yet. Let's not worry about next week. Let's have this moment together right now. There are things that need to be done for tomorrow, but make sure that the majority of our time is spent here now, creating this memory together where we're having fun, or having a nice disagreement over something. Allow it. Yeah.
This is what we have now.
Right.
The future and the past are not what we're looking at. We're looking at right now.
Yes. Yep.
What do you know about heaven?
Little to nothing.
Okay.
And I think it's important for me as a follower of Jesus, as a believer in the Bible, and someone who professes to be a Christian, to be able to admit that there are a lot of things that I do not know about God, about heaven, about hell, about many things in the Bible, and that it's okay. A lot of times we convince ourselves that the knowledge puts us in a better standing with the people who are around us who are also Christians or believers. But in reality, it actually detracts us from our true missions and goals. And we end up spending so much time focusing on minute details that are of little consequence, whereas the here and now are of importance. They are of relevance. And I don't want to spend my time focusing on what heaven might be and just be guessing. I mean, it might be a fun story, but the reality is there's not going to be much truth wrapped up into it. So I guess what I've confined my hope to be of what heaven is where the essence of my loving spirit and my joy and my peace, all those things that I've viewed as being characteristics of God, will be joined with God, and I'll be that for eternity. Beyond that, who knows?
And You have lots of time to learn.
Right.
It won't be a time of just sitting around.
Yeah.
You have all kinds of opportunities to talk to anybody
Mm.
from the Bible that you kind of has caught your eye, or who would you want to talk to first besides Jesus and God? You have a special Bible character that you've always been fascinated by?
Man, that was a tough one. Not sure that I had wrestled to an answer on that as far as a biblical character.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, I think the one that actually pops into my head first is Judas Iscariot.
Okay.
But obviously he wouldn't be in the heaven context potentially, so...
But the knowledge about him would be.
Right, so maybe trying to understand what happened
Mm-hmm.
in that situation, because that's a very confusing aspect of, man, he was right next to Jesus. He was following Jesus. He was a disciple of Jesus. He got to see healings. Like, I feel like if I had had that experience in life, you know, how obvious would things kind of be? And for him to have had that and to still betray the one that he claimed to love, that's interesting.
What unfinished business is most important to you?
There's a lot.
And as you think about it, is there something that people could do to help with that unfinished business?
I think yes. That's part of the unfinished business, is expressing to others what the unfinished business is. So I'll try and break it apart a little bit here and start just with my wife. You know, there's many goals and dreams that we've left unaccomplished with each other at this point. And, you know, some of those would be Maganda World, the charity that we started. Some of those are helping her sisters finish school. Some of those are helping her family just to be in a financially stable position, or a position where they have the ability to turn and help others. So with my wife specifically, you know, it's still thinking about the unfinished business of getting passwords and, you know, login information and all those little bits of information still passed out to her. But then to family and friends, it's the unfinished business of all the long hours of talks we've spent talking about maybe what church should look like, and maybe where our resources as churches should be going, maybe where our time as churches should be going. Are we really focused on the right things? We have a very interesting view of what the church should be here in a very wealthy country, where we get to have buildings and pastors who are paid, and live worship bands who are, you know, trained musicians, and have sound equipment that's top of the line, and all those types of things. And not saying any of those things are bad, but most of the world doesn't get those things. And we devote a lot of those resources here to those things. And just taking a step back and saying, could we do better with our resources? Are we focusing on the right thing? Is you know, Jesus commanded us to be disciples to all nations, and yet it's turned more into an evangelism of all peoples. Is that really our calling, to just make sure people have a knowledge of? Is that what we've been called to? Or is it that we're supposed to raise up people in our lives around us that we have daily and weekly relationship with, that's beyond the Sunday morning hello, that's beyond the theology conversations. We spend a lot of money and time for people to go to college to get Bible degrees, and yet we spend less money and time loving on our neighbor, the reality of really who our neighbor is, and that has me concerned.
When were you saved, and what do you remember about it?
That's a great question, because I think throughout my life I've had learnings of what different people view being saved is. And so, from a child, my first experience with what being saved meant was having a prayer with my mom and expressing that Jesus is Lord, and confessing with my mouth that he was raised, that I believe that he was raised from the dead and that he was Lord of my life. I believe I had an inkling of an understanding of what that really meant, and there was that seed there, and that grew. And I believe that my heart was in the right place, and that's truly therefore why I was saved in my younger life. But as I've gotten older and come to understand what I believe to be more of a fuller understanding of God and his infinite complexity and infinite simplicity, that he has way more grace and mercy than we could imagine, and he has so much more impact on each of us individually than we even give him credit for, that we think that it's on us again to evangelize to people, that we have to impart this specific knowledge and then they will be saved. But I think God is greater than that. And I think that, again, it's through our discipleship that we have been called to disciple. And God is the one who truly saves. And how that looks for each individual person can be a little bit different. But it really comes down to our hearts and our heart's decision on what God looks like and how we decide to live with that knowledge of who we've learned God to be.
Something a little lighter now.
Okay.
If you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
I think this was actually the one that I was having a lot harder time coming up with an answer with the other day. I mean, I think I'd want world peace, and, that food would never be an issue for anybody, that hunger and, sickness wouldn't be an issue for people. But I guess comparing this to some of the questions we've had earlier and to my experience over the last year, what I'd say my wish would be is that everyone would be able to have an experience like I've had in this last year. Not necessarily that they be sick, because I don't wish that on anyone, but getting to revisit all the relationships that I've had over my life and feel the outpouring of love and compassion from people throughout my life. It's been overwhelming to have people by my side, and people who go out of their way to help and to be with me and to care for me, whether it be physically or emotionally or spiritually. I wish that every person could have that experience.
That would be another example of what cancer has taught you.
Mm.
Now you know what is important.
Mm.
What's your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing to do is to have conversations with people and
Okay.
even end up in disagreements and arguments and find resolutions to difficult problems, whether they be spiritual problems or whether they be people problems or political problems. We have so much to teach each other, and sometimes we don't give each other enough credit to actually sit and really listen to somebody else and hear them out, to ask the questions, to say, I really want to understand where you're coming from, because people have spent time thinking about why they've reached an opinion or why they do something the way they do. We should honor them at least in trying to understand why they've reached that decision and empathize with that position. And I think that helps us as people be able to come together to actually find a legitimate answer or conclusion to solve problems amongst each other.
What do you wish you were better at?
I think
end that with at.
Yeah.
We'll overlook that.
I think I tried to answer this one earlier with I wish I was more emotive with my appreciation.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think I answered that one earlier through that.
Who are your best friends and why?
Henry and Jerry. My two best friends are TJ Norman and Ben Wilson. And they have been friends. TJ and I have been friends for over 30 years now, and Ben and I for 25-ish, a little more. And they are my best friends because of pretty much everything we've talked about, and that is that we can get together and have the difficult life conversations and know that on the other end of them, we're still going to be friends, even if we disagree, even if we have a completely different opinion, even if we want to do completely different things that would have different outcomes and results. We know that we have each other's back and that we care about each other. We be there for each other. And yeah.
What a blessing.
Yeah.
Some people could even say one friend that's like that. You've got at least two.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a few others.
Yes, definitely more than those two goofballs, but
yeah. Okay. What would you consider a good day if your health was not an issue? You were strong and out of pain and not sick.
A good day would be, waking up with the sun and having a nice meal with my wife and family and friends, and having a nice breakfast conversation about what we're going to do for the day as far as the adventures we might be going on, whether it be an activity of let's go rock climbing or surfing or swimming or something active, and how we could include other people in that activity. And then also having, good lunch. I like food. Food's important to me. So sharing that meal over the lunchtime, just relaxing, where we could talk about life and politics and love, and then just again spending the whole day with people. That would be a dream day where it would be filled with activities of doing things, maybe playing games, eating food, and talking, and then rolled into that the element of having new people come into that fold of maybe it's somebody who's just hasn't had that friend, or hasn't had some of the opportunities that we've all had, and sharing the joy and the love that we all have for each other with other people is absolutely a key element in a good day. So
now something very important is, how did you meet your wife, and what's your story?
I almost feel like she needs to be here to help with part of the story, but I guess I can tell it myself. Okay. So she was working at Costco, and I believe the first time I remember seeing her, she had on this very yellow, bright outfit. And I had gone through the checkout, and she was the cashier, so I get to be the one to say that she was checking me out first.
I think you'd already done that.
So, but the notable time when we actually really met, she was at the security on the way out the door where you hand them your receipt. And I handed her my receipt, and she looked at me and said, "Root beer?" questioningly. And so I thought she was asking where the root beer was on my cart. And so I had it underneath on the bottom part, and so I pointed underneath and pointed it out to her, and she said, "No, what is root beer?" And so I did the smoothest thing possible. I just stared at her and thought to myself, who in the world does not know what root beer is? And after staring at each other for a few seconds, she said, can you get drunk off it? And I said, "Oh no, it's a sugary carbonated beverage." And so she said, "Oh, okay." And so I went out to my car and sat down, packed up my car, sat down, and thought to myself a second, maybe I should get a root beer and my business card and just go hand it to her. And just had one of those kind of, prayerful thoughts that you ever occasionally have. And it came into my mind, Alex, you're 26 years old and what you've done so far hasn't worked yet. So I grabbed a root beer and my business card and went back in and handed her the root beer and my business card and just said, just give me a call and let me know if you like it. That's it. And her fellow employee encouraged her to take the root beer, that it wasn't that big a deal, because technically they aren't allowed to accept things from customers. So she ended up going home and looking me up online through my business card and checking out to make sure I was actually a music instructor. And so she was interested in taking lessons, which is why she didn't throw my card away. And she tried the root beer and didn't like it. So she was calling to let me know that she didn't like it. And then she got nervous and hung up. But I worked at a job where I was on call 24/7 for emergencies at an apartment building. And so I had to call the number back immediately to just make sure it wasn't an emergency issue. And she picked up and we talked and hit it off, and that's how it all started.
And continues.
Yes.
Okay. What does your ideal missions trip look like?
Yeah. So Lolo and I, Maganda and I, my friends and I, we've had conversations about missions trips, and I've been on a few, and kind of have an idea of how those were structured. Obviously, I haven't been on all of them, so there's potentially some out there that maybe are doing kind of this already. But Missions trips are a tricky thing, because what we're doing from the perspective of coming from the United States and going to another country is potentially saying, I get to go on a trip and spend all this money on a plane ticket and my food and all these things, and then we go there and spend a week or two evangelizing to people who we probably will never see again in our lives. The other things that get incorporated into trips are, going and building buildings for people, and maybe there is some expertise needed here to help with that. But the reality is, a lot of times there's so much money and time that is spent kind of indulging us to get our experience, that we end up not helping the economic structure of where we're going to say, hey, there's people here who actually do construction work that could use this money in this job. And then we end up actually taking that job away from them because we're offering to do it for free. And so in the effect of trying to do something that's kind and helpful, we actually end up causing more problems by taking away some of those jobs. The other parts that get tied up into that is, the good elements are, on a missions trip, you get to meet and see the needs of people who live differently than you do. But again, we're still this buffer zone. There's this removal where you don't really get to experience what it's like to sleep in the cardboard box that's wet, or to have fire ants crawling on you all night because you're in a comfortable hotel room, which is typically what would happen in a missions environment. Or, that you know what it's like to live in their circumstance where they work 12 hours today just to provide their only meal for the day. And yet we think, because we saw it, we think because that moved us, that puts us in a position to help them in the best way possible. And that's really dangerous. So ideally, one of the things I thought of would be neat to have a missions trip to kind of maybe switch some of those experiences and burdens and things around, would be to create an environment here in the United States where people could experience what it's like to live in a third world country, where we would have them work on a farm for 12 hours, where they would make just enough money to have one meal, where they would have a budget to understand how impossible it is to work yourself out of poverty. There's so many misconceptions about poverty, where people say if they just worked harder, if they applied themselves, if they had the right education. It's hard to communicate those things without a proper experience of actually knowing, going through it. It's just the only way to really truly understand. So to create an experience like that, I think would be very eye-opening. And then that money that was going to be set aside for plane tickets and hotels and airfares and taxi rides and experiences, getting to try out, the food and all of that, that could all be set aside and actually be sent over to missionaries who are in those countries to actually move into, help build up the infrastructure of those people who need it, to help kids go to school, to help with food, to help create businesses there that could be international businesses. One of the biggest problems with poverty is there are many businesses that are in poverty areas, but their business is to impoverished people. how much money can you make off of someone who doesn't have money? You can't. So, a goal has always been to create and plant international type businesses in impoverished communities so that they could sell goods internationally, because then people from the United States could pay a United States price to inject that economic stimulus into impoverished communities and countries. Whereas right now, the idea of charity is we'll send them free things. And that's another dangerous thing where, if you look at countries like Haiti, for example, I think we're still sending them free rice from when they had that devastating hurricane 10 years ago or more. And, what that's done is put all the rice producers in Haiti out of business because you can't compete with free rice. So we need to be diligent in understanding the implications of our giving and understanding that, you don't send winter clothes to the Philippines. That just adds to their trash. They're a tropical country, Now there are colder areas that need blankets and coats. That is true, but they don't need cocktail dresses. They don't need high-heeled shoes necessarily. Maybe some of them might appreciate it, but the reality is we need to be diligent about what we send and not just send them our garbage and say, oh, we're blessing them with our garbage. So I think I could probably talk about that for a lot longer. So maybe
the
I'll...
idea of doing something here in the States to make a comparable experience.
Right.
Take the money.
Yeah.
And actually use it for those that need it.
Right.
Those all sound pretty brilliant to me. You better write that stuff down.
Well, I've talked about it with enough people, but yes. Yeah. So.
Because as long as we give, they still are victims.
Right.
That's what's happening in our welfare system in the United States.
Yep.
So, how you doing? Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, we're about to the end.
Okay.
All right. Who is Alex Seemann? And who are you when no one's around?
Okay. Well, that's so I guess we're going for what I hope people say of me and what I think of myself, maybe.
I would probably, what you tell yourself is not to your advantage most of the time. All the negative junk we tell ourselves. But maybe I should go and ask these guys. Who is it?
Yeah, maybe we could do that. You guys could come here and sit after and give it a little bit.
Yeah.
All right. If I had to give a short synopsis of who is Alex, I guess what I aspire to be is to be open-minded about every situation, because I know there's no way I could possibly be the most knowledgeable. There's no way I could ever have attained a skill set or a knowledge beyond anyone who's ever existed. So I guess in a sense it's like I want to keep myself humble to the possibility that I am wrong at all times, because that's one of the hardest things to be okay with. It's hard to be okay with being wrong. One of the things that I tell myself in that is, it is so much easier, though, in reality, to be wrong than it is to be right. Because if I'm wrong, the only person's mind that I need to change is mine. If I'm right and everyone else is wrong, that is a whole different ballgame, because then I have to convince everyone else that they're wrong. So if you can find the things that you got wrong and can change those, man, that's a whole lot easier. You save yourself a lot of energy.
And eternity will provide you with all the knowledge you can take on. For eternity, you're going to learn. And so all these things that you've been striving for, you'll be surprised what you're going to find out very quickly when you get there.
Yeah, we'll see what.
And of all things, how do you want to be remembered?
I mean, I guess I hope I'm remembered as a servant, someone who looked for ways to help build people, that when people left their time with me, that they felt empowered to accomplish things, and that they would also walk away challenged. Obviously that can't happen every time you meet somebody, but that at least at some point I would have challenged a way of their thinking, a way of how they perceive the world, a way of how they perceive God, a way of how they perceive others. So I guess some people might just call that ornery.
Open-minded?
Yeah.
You're definitely open-minded.
Yeah. And I hope that people even would say I was too open-minded.
You think that's possible, to be too open-minded?
Well, I think people can think that about other people. I would want to be that borderline where, people would say, that's maybe even too far. I think that's okay. That we need to push ourselves to understand so much that it should be uncomfortable.
Well, I have certainly benefited by sitting here listening to you.
Thank you.
And that's certainly what I would say about you. You challenge, care. So I have enjoyed this. And one other thing I would like to tell you is that when it is time for you to leave this earth, don't worry about it. Because I've been with many people. And angels come. And you're far from being alone. And it's a very beautiful thing. So don't be afraid. Thank you.
I guess I don't feel like I've been afraid.
Okay.
But I just don't want to miss out on the time. That's my only thing that I'm sad about, is I feel like I'll miss.
Miss the only things we know here. This is what we know.
Well, creating more memories and experiences. Because those are the things I cherish. People have always asked, how can I help? What can I do? Some people ask, what can I give? And I've just been at this place long enough to know it's like I am going to miss creating those new memories with everybody.
It is hard to walk away from the only thing you've known and go to the unknown. But I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised. Is there anything else that as you went through our list, is there anything else that you would like to add?
I just want to make sure everybody knows how much I love you. Even though I know I'll be with God, just that still physical separation from being with you, I will miss you terribly. And I will look forward to eternity. And I think it'll be easier for me because I'll just get to turn around and see you after I get there, because time won't matter as much. But I wish I could have made more memories with you all. Please love on each other and care about each other. Always look for ways, talk about the ways that you can be more kind and more loving, that you can share with your neighbor, that you can share with your family, that you can share with your friends. When you pass that person on the street who needs help, do more than just toss a coin in the cup. Ask them about their life. Get to know their name. Challenge yourself to dig deeper than what you think you should. Jesus said, if someone asks you to walk a mile, one mile with them, walk another. Do that.
Thank you.
Thanks for your help.
What was the question again?
Who is Alex?
To me, Alex has always been a rock to me. A friend, a best friend that I can count on for anything. When I've struggled, he's always been there. When I've needed answers to something, or a question answered, or advice about something, relationship, different things, work, has always been somebody that I can go to and count on for any kind of advice. And he would give it to me very truthfully, sometimes too truthfully. And he's just been a person that's caring beyond anybody that I've ever met in my entire life. And one to show me or to correct me in ways that nobody else has or done in the past, from different things that I shouldn't have been doing or doing wrong. He's always been one to be real and honest and correct and lead in a way that true friendship is, true brotherhood, somebody who's not afraid to correct or to always bring out the best in people. That's who I think Alex is striving to bring out the best in everybody, and showing them that they can do better, even if they're doing a good job. Always striving, man. There could be more you could be doing. You could be doing this, or you could be doing better with that. And that's one thing I love about Alex, and I'm going to cherish and try to live out that legacy of trying to do better and pushing people to do better, and just learning from that. So that's who I know Alex to be, that true friend, no matter what, through the thick and through the thin, and always being there for everybody. And those memories are going to be cherished forever. So
that's good. Who is Alex? Well, Alex is a loved child of God. And everybody goes through certain situations in their life to kind of shape them into certain things. And for Alex, the big part of his life, the thing that has shaped him the most, I feel like, is the real revelation of how important love is and how important true love is. That's always something that comes up in conversations and things that are important in life, and it comes up in every conversation we have. He's always been the one to push for relationship, even if, I didn't always push back on that. He's always been the one to want to be there, want to be present, want to build a relationship up. And also, I'll second what TJ said. Very truthful. There's not a lot of people in my life that might give you very truthful feedback on whether it be a song that you wrote or whatever. But Alex would give you very truthful feedback. Maybe negative, maybe positive, but it would be true to him. And that's important. And that's a great character for somebody to have, a great thing for somebody to have in their character. But overall, I would say what shaped him the most and the path that he has been led on is driven by love and driven by that connection with people and relationship. Probably definitely more than any other friend in my life, pushing for that at every chance. So I think that's who Alex is.
Most devastatingly truthful comment I've ever made.
To us?
Yeah.
This was easy for me. Oh my gosh. I was dating a girl, and you're like, you should not be dating her. And I bucked that so hard. And I tried to make it work. And you knew and were very honest with me that I was not supposed to be dating this person. And I tell that story to even the youth kids, even today. I use you as an example of listening to those people around you and your friends and true friends around you. And man, I lost, years of that relationship I shouldn't have been in. And that was one of the most truthful and honest things that you told me. And you were very honest and very blatant about, that I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing. And it was very honest and very true, and it was correct, obviously in the end. So that's one I've shared quite a few times with people, and even to Liz too, and after the fact. But she always sticks out to me that Alex is like, you should be dating her. And I didn't listen until the end, obviously, but it was tough. I should have done that. Should have done more.
The most, how'd you put it?
Devastatingly
truthful comment or feedback. Mine's less dire than yours. There's probably been others, but as we all know, I can't remember a whole lot of things.
It's a true story.
So I will mention, it has to do with music. It wasn't that long ago when you were in the hospital in Iowa City, and you watched our live show. It was in Des Moines, and then I think we came back to visit you at the hospital, And actually, I feel like maybe even Cassie said she wanted some feedback from you. Somehow that happened. And you were just giving like really good feedback to us that wasn't all positive, you know? I think I remember you saying there was a time when I was playing guitar and I was giving it like some flair or something. I was like lifting it up or something. And then I think you said at that point, Alex was like, I'm not watching this. I'm not watching this.
I think I was listening. I don't want a visual anymore.
So, love that. And then you were giving us some real honest feedback about our voices, how they blended together, you know? Some real specific things that we could work on. And they were good. It was good feedback. Yeah. By the way, I've been working on singing with vibrato. It's been weird, but yeah. So good feedback, yeah. I would say that.
Nice.
Yeah. All right, I got one simple question that I was thinking about. I'll give you a scenario. You are completely alone. You know, everybody's off doing something. Your wife's running an errand. Everybody's gone. Mm-hmm. You're alone at the house. What are you doing in that time when nobody's around? Or what are you thinking about? And not necessarily in the context of this last year, but in general, just as a person. In that alone time, what are you doing and what are you thinking about?
I mean, this could be even in the context that you're talking about. You know, when I would drive to different job sites, you know, I think the typical thing is radio or some music on or listening to something. I'd say probably at least 50% of the time, no music, no radio, nothing. You know, if I guess I was home alone, I might be probably watching Netflix or something like that, but then, you know, it'd be a documentary or something, and this all ties together in the sense that, you know, if I was listening to the radio in the car ride, it would be, you know, probably like public radio. So typically, you know, some topic would come up that I would hear or be concerned about or start wondering about, and then I would just be in that quiet or in the stillness and think about that topic and try to evaluate what my current position is on it, why it's that way, and then I would take it from there and probably backtrack it and say, well, you know, I know other people view it this way. Why do they view it that way? So I'd say, you know, a lot of that time was spent philosophically reevaluating my positions on things, you know, trying to not just be okay with this is my opinion, it's what it is, and that's it. In fact, one of the things I really like to challenge myself to do was to prove myself wrong, almost, you know, where like I hold a certain viewpoint, and instead of like hopping online or trying to find resources or whatever that validate that position, I would try to hop on and find things that invalidated that position, you know, because I want to understand, like, you know, if that's my position, I feel like, well, then I probably understand that part of it pretty well. So that means I don't probably understand the other part of it that well. So I would want to understand why, you know, so I've spent lots of time looking up things like, you know, abortion? Like, what parts of that? Like, what aspects of that? You know, I know there are good people out there who are loving and compassionate and caring, who are saying that pro-choice is important for women. Well, I need to break this down. I need to understand why a loving, caring, compassionate person could feel so strongly about that when I feel the opposite and I think I'm a loving, caring, compassionate person. What's the disconnect? Like, what am I missing that they saw? Or what piece of information or what experience did they have that gave them that different perspective? And sometimes I would find it and sometimes I wouldn't, like that's definitely one I still struggle with. But I'm still going to try because there's, something that convinced someone enough to have a different opinion. So they have to, I can't just write people off as stupid and be like, oh, they just don't care, or they have all bad sources, or all, that just doesn't make sense in this larger scheme of things if you're being really truthful and honest with yourself about how other people think.
That's good.
So still trying to learn or evaluate your own opinions in life when you're chilling at home.
Yeah.
Just round that off.
All right, this would be a question that even just what would you want to tell your parents
About
your life, or what's something that you would want your parents to know?
I want my parents to know that I am so grateful for them. I am so lucky to have had the life that I've had, and a large reason why is because of them. I've had so many opportunities and so many experiences that most people throughout history have never even got to experience. I never remember having to be worried about resources or anything. And I never had to worry about what if, this bad thing happened, would my family no longer accept me or love me or care about me, or, what would they think about me if, I never felt like I was ever in a position where I could lose their love. And so I trust them, I trust their love. I learned a lot about loving people and from them. They taught us what love is growing up. They didn't just, through experience, through doing, and by bringing in the foster kids, by bringing in people who have different life experiences, showing us how different life can be, yet how close together we are as people. And that how simple it is for someone to just have a completely different life because of their parents, who their parents are, or where they grew up, what side of a border they grew up on, So I'm extremely lucky.
What about your brothers and sisters? What would you want to say?
Well, there's a lot of you. So I'm hoping we'll get some individual time to talk here soon. So just in general, as a whole, like, I've always known that my siblings love me, even though we have had arguments or fights, or that we've had differences of opinion or differences of beliefs or whatever, I always have known that they love me. And we just had different ways of getting through tough times, different ways of handling situations, different ways of talking through things. And so that's okay, We're all very different people, but I've always felt loved by them, even through those times that were difficult or frustrating. So I want them to know that I love them, and I am so proud of all of them and happy with, how amazing people they've turned out to be, that they're, loving, compassionate people who care about others. Like, and what more could you want from having brothers and sisters than ones who want to help you and join you in those things? They've always shown an appreciation for wanting to help others. So
good family.
mm-hmm.
Some good parents.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't want it to feel like you're answering the same things again and again.
No.
But what about Lolo?
Mm-hmm.
What would you?
Yeah, I thought there were more questions on the list. I'm not sure. So thank you for asking that.
Yeah, what would you say to Lolo?
I don't even know I know that people, when they have an opportunity to talk to her and hear a little bit about her life or a little bit about her experiences, I feel like they just get a taste of how deep her love for people runs. And I don't think that everyone has even, I don't know many other people. I know she probably has some friends, but I hope that everyone takes a little more time to talk to her about, because she won't freely give this information. You kind of have to pry it out of her about her experience. But she is beyond a doubt the most generous, compassionate, kind, loving person I've ever met in my life. And deciding that I wanted to marry her was the easiest decision of my life. When other people talk about how they were nervous or scared about their wedding, or they had any sort of hesitations or whatever, I do not understand at all. I did not have any of that. She blows me away with how deep her reservoir is for people, and that alone, it makes her the most outstanding person I've ever known.